Over the past couple of years, Amazon has gotten incredibly strict on the amount and type of inventory that you can ship into their FBA warehouses. But this Q4 could be one of the worst yet, as Amazon has throttled limits across categories, and even highly successful ASINs and sellers are being impacted. So what do you do when you're up against these inventory limits? What do you do when you want to send in more than you currently have? And most importantly, how do you prioritize what you send in to maximize profits for Q4 and for your Amazon business? Well, in this video, we get into that and more. Let's go. What is up, guys? Welcome to Heist, the deep dive Amazon FBA channel. And in today's video, we're going to dive into a really important topic, especially as you head into heavy shopping seasons like Q4. If you've been selling on Amazon at any point over the last 4 years, really since COVID, they've slowly started to implement restrictions on the types of ASINs and the quantity of product that can actually be shipped into their Amazon FBA warehouses for each seller account. This started in COVID because they literally just didn't have enough workers and space to satisfy the demand. But really since then, they've had an incredible time trying to keep up with the growing e-commerce demand and the massive amount of staff that they need to have in their fulfillment centers to receive, process, pick, pack, and ship inventory. And what this has meant is more recently, there's been inventory limitations set up on every seller's account. One is for standard size inventory, one is for oversized inventory, and then there's additional ones for apparel and footwear. So the big problem is that you've been selling along on Amazon, you're expecting high season traffic and sales for your products. So you'd ideally want to send as much in as possible to capitalize on those sales and not stock out, but Amazon's capped you and you can't send in more. So what we're gonna do in this video is walk through the rationale that we're using to determine what inventory to send in. And as a bonus step, we're gonna give you some advice on how to actually expand your inventory limit so you can send more inventory into Amazon's warehouses. So let's dive into my computer. So as with most decisions in business, it starts off with really the logic and economics of what makes the most sense. So what we're gonna do initially with all of our products is to calculate both the ROI, the return on investment. So if I put $1 into a product, what do I get back? I'm also going to be looking at the estimated contribution margin during this period where we've got capped inventory. So in the case of a Q4, we're trying to figure out what is the net profit dollars I can achieve with each of my individual products. So how we do this is to run it through our ROI calculator. Shameless plug, this is one of 20 plus growth tools that we have in the FBA Blueprint course, which I recently launched, link down below. But if you follow along here, this is something you could pretty easily calculate and curate on your own as well. So what we want to really understand is for each level of the inventory sizes that we've got in our portfolio, what are the ones that deliver the best ROI and the best contribution margin? So we're gonna line up all of our standard size products and kind of weight those against themselves. And if you've got oversized products or apparel, we're gonna also line those up and really just optimize the amount of money we can make given the limited amount of inventory that Amazon is letting us ship into their warehouse. So here's a couple hypothetical examples. These are real ASINs, but hypothetical. We've got this product here, which is basically a golf push cart. We've got a golf rangefinder, and then we've got a bag of tees. So various sizes, various revenue amounts, and various ROI and profit margins as well. So what we're basically gonna do is in our calculator, we kind of have different setups for launch, Q3, Q4. So we're gonna look at Q4, mainly because the storage cost is different within Amazon during Q4, but you can kind of toggle that. So we tend to look at these in different moments in time. We'll also look at them different if it's a launch product versus one that's more stable. But we're basically just gonna put the anticipated price that we're going to sell in Q4. We're then gonna kind of throw in the length, width, height, and weight, and then that's going to basically calculate what the size tier is. The size tier ultimately, regardless of what you're selling and regardless of what you're shipping, is going to dictate what the Amazon FBA fulfillment cost is. So you can see here it makes sense, right? It's going to cost us almost $25 here to do this larger cart. The small little rangefinder, the smallest product is $364, so pretty inexpensive. And then this light but still decent sized little bag of teas is going to be $5 to ship. Then we basically have Amazon's going to take their cut for referral fees. This depends on the category, but is typically 15%. So you can just kind of go in there and look at your product now and see what they're charging you, and that will give you an idea what the percentage is. We personally use these drop downs for all these different categories to calculate it. But 95% of the time it's going to be about 15%. So you can see those fees here across the board. And then we want to figure out, hey, how long do we anticipate that the product that we're going to send into Amazon, what's the kind of average amount that it's going to be in there? So we assume since this one is bigger and we're likely going to be sending palletized goods here, this one might be 3 months, and then we're just assuming 2 months for each of these guys. So then there's an average storage per item as well that comes into play that we need to factor into our economics. And again, because this is Q4, storage fees are going to be more. And if you've got a product in there for greater than 6 months, there's also going to be an additional cost. Then we come into the landed cost of your product. So this includes the factory costs to actually get it made, any inspection fees, anything you've got to do to kind of get it out of the factory. And then there's the actual transport costs, whether you're shipping via air or via ocean, basically from your manufacturer to the destination country, in this case, the United States. And then you also have tariffs on top of that. And then you've got any transportation, storage, etc. that it takes to get from port into the actual place that you're selling. So in the case of an Amazon business, you may be going to a 3PL first, and then it gets trucked or sent to an Amazon FBA warehouse. So this is basically the landed cost of this product. That's going to basically give us our total profit, our gross margin, and then ultimately our ROI percentage on these products. In the Amazon space and really any physical product space, you need to have this ROI number be greater than 100%, because it basically enables you to go buy additional inventory that you're going to need to sell as you scale and grow. If this is below 100%, it becomes incredibly difficult to scale. And most sellers stop here if they even calculate ROI at all. But one thing that we do is we take it a step further and we really want to understand the net contribution margin. What are the actual net profits and proceeds that we can expect for each individual product? And that's where this calculator gets a little bit more detailed than most. We like to basically throw in the return rate and the estimated advertising costs, or the total advertising costs that we anticipate we're going to need to spend on each product to get sales. So in this case, we've kind of thrown in an 8% return rate. Usually higher ticket products tend to have a little bit more of a return rate because if people don't like them, it's not like they're just giving up like 10 to 20 bucks. It's actually substantial, so they'll ship it back in. So we've assumed an 8% here in the push cart, and then 5% here for these smaller items, which is pretty typical. Sometimes electronics has a little bit more, but we've made that assumption here. We've also assumed a higher tacos because we're typically going to have a much lower conversion rate on higher ticket products. So we're assuming that we're going to have to spend 18% on ads in this case. And then the golf rangefinder here is 15% and this one is 7%. So what that basically does is it gives us all of these different profit margins down here. And then it gives us really a net ROI percentage. So if we were to look up here across the board at this first one, which is what most people do, we would think, oh, this is like a home run. We've got like 49% margins. We're turning our cash over 2 to 1. This is the one that we should sell the most of, all the sizes being equal. But when we start to trim those additional data points down, we can actually see that this golf rangefinder in this example actually has the highest return rate. And in fact, in the case of these golf tees, we're actually going to have an incredibly difficult time growing if we spend more money on this inventory because it's only returning at 85%. So it's 85 cents we get back per dollar we put in terms of purchasing more inventory. So let's assume that these are all in the same size category. Our decision now needs to be, how do we prioritize our finite inventory that we can send into Amazon, and how much of each should we send in? And it's pretty simple, right? If you look at it just strictly based on mathematics, the one that gives us the most actual money in our pocket that we can redistribute to grow our business is the one that we should prioritize and send the most in. And then if we've got additional room past that we can send in, then we can move on to the additional products. So what we've got to do to estimate this is to estimate the number of units per month, especially during this period that we're kind of dealing with these inventory restrictions that we actually anticipate selling. That basically multiplies into this total net profit for the product after everything. And that's going to basically give us our estimated contribution margin for that period in time for this product. So we can see here for the golf push cart, it's a bigger product, a higher ticket, so we're not going to sell as many of them, obviously. So we've got 100 units a month here. That's going to deliver just shy of $4,600 in net contribution margin. But look at this here, right? This is one that was like 40% less ROI on the top line, typical ROI calculator. But since we're moving 200 units of this, despite the fact that we're making less total profit at the unit level, we're actually bringing in $6,600 here. So this is a no-brainer, right? We're gonna make $1,600 more per month if we ship this guy in than if we are this one. So we should prioritize this rangefinder, despite the fact, again, that up here it had a lower ROI, and despite the fact that it's something like $8 a unit less in profit. And then if we move on to the tees, this is a massive volume mover. So let's imagine that this is like a stocking stuffer for golfers. If we move 3,000 of these a month, again, way lower gross margin, it's only 14%, and it's only $1.87 a unit, we actually move $5,600 in actual net contribution margin. So this kind of math dispels what may look like more surface level decisions that we should choose this golf push cart, and it actually pushes us into other directions. So if I'm the brand owner for this, I'm definitely going to prioritize and send as many of these golf rangefinders as I think is feasible to meet the demand during the period. And then if that's met, then we go on to the next one. And then if that's met, we go on to the next one. So this is the way you can actually calculate this and figure out your limits. But there's obviously a couple non-monetary considerations that you need to kind of bring into effect. The first of which is the fact that you've got to think about logistics, right? Obviously with this bigger product here, maybe we're sending it less than truckload, which may be 2+ weeks to get into Amazon. It's really unpredictable. Versus these guys here, which are smaller, we can likely do SPD, which may be a matter of like 4 or 5 days before it gets checked into Amazon. So we need to factor in timing here too. What is the risk of actually drip fitting this inventory into Amazon? And if we think there's going to be gaps, we've got to account for that in our strategy, even if one looks better on paper mathematically. The other thing that we need to consider here, like let's say that we were moving in this golf rangefinder, even though it's smaller, we wouldn't need to do this, but let's say that we were actually moving this via truckload, right? But during Q4, to actually get it into Amazon's inventory, we've got to do UPS, which is incredibly more expensive. So maybe it goes from like 20 cents a unit to like $4 a unit to send it in. So let's say that we move this COGS to 32 because we had to do SPD here. You can see it drops down the ROI, it drops down the net margin, and it still makes it profitable here in this case. But if this drew below that for those increased shipping costs, we need to kind of factor that into our decision as well. So the next one that we need to think about is FBM versus FBA. There's some categories, especially where lots of the competitors are shipping FBM, that if you actually flipped it over to FBM, you're not going to lose a lot of organic rank, and Amazon's still going to drive that organic traffic to your listing. So let's say that in this example of the golf push cart, everybody in this time of year is doing FBM because it's a bit of a larger product. We can actually flip that to FBM, not hurt our FBA limits in terms of sending inventory into Amazon, and use our 3PL instead to fulfill that inventory via FBM with not a whole lot of impact on our sales. So if you've got a scenario where you can flip to FBM without a lot of impact financially and with ranking, you should definitely try to save some of that FBA inventory for other products. Another one here is just strategic considerations post Q4, right? So some of these products, even if they're not the best contribution margin at this moment in time, may have a really big strategic impact on your business or for other initiatives that you've got. Maybe it's your hero product and people buy a bunch of other products with it, so it improves the lifetime value of your product. Maybe it's really, really hard for others to compete against you in that category and you don't want to lose your position by getting out of stock. So think about those strategic considerations, even if contribution margin isn't perfect for a particular product. The next one is open inventory commitments. So let's say that you've got a whack load of inventory coming in, like you're selling Christmas trees. So I don't care if it's low contribution margin or not. You're not selling Christmas trees after Christmas, or you're not going to be doing it very profitably. So you may want to make those decisions based on open inventory commitments, and you don't want to be stuck with 8, 9, 10, 12 months worth of inventory after this particular period. The next is 3PL fees and costs. Again, something that most sellers don't necessarily calculate when they're thinking about these economic decisions. Let's say that our storage fees make it so it's like $4 a month at our 3PL. So maybe this COGS goes up to like 30, $32 again. That's going to hurt the profit potential of this product and the contribution margin of this product if we're having these operating costs that are eating away at margins from a 3PL. And then the final one is just what inventory do you actually have available and on hand, right? So even in this case of the rangefinder, which is the best economic decision for contribution margin, if we only have 100 of them in stock and we've got a bunch left on a boat and we may not get to ship it in, obviously we're not going to be able to fully maximize the estimated units per month here. So be thinking about what do you actually have on hand. Can you maximize that? Then you basically go next down the line in terms of what's contributing the most margin to your business. So while this is all good, you may be asking, hey Adam, well, how do I actually improve my limit to begin with? So we'll kind of give you a couple tips here. First and foremost, just remember this is almost exclusively based on sales velocity, or in layman's terms, how quickly are you turning over the inventory that you send into Amazon? The quicker you can turn around inventory, the more Amazon's going to trust you to send stuff in, and the more they're going to enable you to increase the limit that you can send stuff in. So you should be hyper focused on improving your inventory turns and sales velocity in order to bump that number up regardless of contribution margin. One other trick you can do if you've got some wholesale relationships is you can actually send in some wholesale products which are typically going to turn really, really fast, and send those in as a short-term strategy to improve sales velocity. And the final one, which I don't think a lot of sellers know, is that you might actually be able to reach out to seller support, typically through some escalated channels, and actually get your limit increased. The most effective strategy here is to basically say something like, hey, we're actually looking at turning our entire catalog on to fulfillment orders via the Amazon platform on our Shopify site. But in order to do that, we're obviously going to be taking inventory from Amazon's system to fulfill these off Amazon Shopify orders. So can you please extend and expand my inventory limits such that we can actually fulfill our orders through Amazon? And oftentimes Amazon's going to like that, right? They want to be the ones that are tapping into other revenue sources that don't exist on their platform. And fulfillment orders is one of the ways that you can do that. All right, guys, so that is it. I hope this was a helpful video, and I hope that you get awesome sales this Q4 and beyond for your Amazon business. Stay tuned next week. We're going to continue to drop videos like we always do. And in the interim, check out this video next. Catch you on the flip side.